Dramatic reveals of secret family members in comics are about as common as a spandex outfit. While these wacky surprises are always interesting, they do have one negative result, because after a while, readers may begin to presume that every unusual family tie will be clearly handed to us on a silver platter. But many of the weirdest family relations aren't given big reveals, instead lying in wait for you to discover them and spend the next week haunted by this realization. Because when you find out that Lois Lane technically gave birth to Darkseid, or that Doc Ock almost married the woman who would become his parental figure, you just can't help but let that information linger in the darkest corners of your mind. When it's with the characters you know and love, it almost feels like you've found the hidden secret of a friend, carrying all those lovely feelings of awkward embarrassment along with it. With that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, and here are 10 comic book characters you didn't know were related. 10. Peter Parker and Teresa Parker. The Parker family is, for the lack of a better term, all 7 flavors of messed up. Poor Petey is technically related to J. Jonah Jameson, and it's still unclear if his mother is actually his mother, or in fact his aunt. This wild, wacky time is made a touch more wild by the fact that it's later revealed Peter has a secret sister. Not only was Teresa's birth kept a secret from even Peter, she was sent off to be adopted after their parents died, leaving Spidey with no way of uncovering his hidden sibling. Or at least that was the case until she saved Peter's life and revealed the small plot twist of who she was to him. Although Spider-Man is initially surprised, he deals with it characteristically quickly. After all, in the grand scheme of his life, it's not even the top 10 weirdest things that happened to him that week. Plus, she is a secret agent, and discovering your secret sister is also a secret agent has to be a double scoop of badass news. 9. Hulkling and Captain Marvel. Being the child of a brief fling is pretty awkward, take it from me. Being the child of a brief fling between a superhero and the princess of the alien race who kidnapped him is much, much worse. And also the vaguely uncomfortable reality of Hulkling, a member of the Young Avengers. But before you get confused, it's worth saying that Hulkling's parent isn't the Captain Marvel you might be thinking of. Instead of Carol Danvers, it's actually the original Captain, who was also known as Mar-Vell. Due to his unusual parental circumstances, Hulkling grew up with a fair few daddy issues, fixed somewhat when he met his dad as a young man, although he would only get to meet him once before Mar-Vell passed away. 8. Creed and Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler's family tree is a profoundly confusing thing, seemingly crafted in order to force characters who would otherwise never interact into uncomfortable proximity with each other through being secret relatives. While there are many soap-level surprises, the best has to be the simple fact that Nightcrawler and Graydon Creed, renowned supervillain and all-round jerk, are in fact half-brothers. Because they're both sons of Mystique, which is slightly less impressive given she has like 6 superpowered children that we're aware of. This makes every time they come into contact even more awkward, as they're usually on opposing sides, and usually pretty mad that their half-sibling is willing to throw down with them. 7. Kang and Mr. Fantastic. Given that Kang and the Fantastic Four are so often warring against one another, it's surprising how little their familial ties are mentioned whatsoever. Because Kang is also known as Nathaniel Richards, a last name you might recognize because it's the family name of, well, Reed Richards. While Nathaniel has several other identities, because nothing in comics is ever straightforward, the timeline where he is Kang is perhaps the most important. Interestingly, it's also been suggested that he isn't the descendant of Reed, but rather instead Doctor Doom, which would explain the whole super evil thing. Either way, it's safe to say he's a product of a particularly unusual family line, which would explain his particularly unusual life. 6. Darkseid and Lois Lane. Were Darkseid and Lois Lane related in the main DC universe, it'd be a twist like no other, and undeniably at least a little bit hilarious. Unfortunately, this isn't really the case, as the pair are only family in Earth 3, where Lois Lane is the villainous Superwoman. She's also very pregnant in this universe with Lex Luthor's child, it's a long story, and when the said child is born, it's exposed to both the Omega effect and the anti-life equation, resulting in said baby becoming the new Darkseid. Yeah, the whole thing's weird, but you know, baby Darkseid, the new baby Yoda, you decide. Probably not though. 5. Otto Octavius and Aunt May. When Doc Ock managed to successfully swap bodies with Spider-Man, it became clear that a lot of things would change. Our actual web-slinging hero appeared to have died, and thus a new, entirely morally bankrupt Spidey was now front and center for the superior Spider-Man series. However, there is one change that the comic gently glosses over, the matter of Aunt May. Because obviously Aunt May is Peter's biological aunt, or even his mother if you take the scandalous shenanigans of Trouble to be true, which makes Otto now being in Peter's body super gross, as he had tried to marry Aunt May back in the old school Spider-Man comics, with a latter edition making it very clear that the two had a premarital bone down before the soon-to-be cancelled wedding. But thank God, Octavius appears to have put his hankering for a slice of the Grey Fox behind him after his time spent being her nephew. Because if there's one thing Superior Spider-Man did not need, it's that. 4. Charles Xavier and Legion. Charles Xavier is a man lauded for his paternal instincts. A fatherly figure to the majority of the X-Men, his guiding hand has soothed many a wild mutant, with an effective combo of sage guidance and using his powers to literally see inside their heads on occasion. As such, it's weird to see just how poorly Professor X handles his relationship with his biological son, Legion, because chances are you likely didn't even know he had a son, and for all intents and purposes, it appears this is because Charles wants it that way. The man literally never talks about his own kid, despite the fact that David is a case of a highly powerful and highly unstable young mutant. He'd be a perfect way to show the younger generation that he understands exactly what they're going through. Instead, he's practically an X-Men ghost tale, as Xavier furiously tries to hide away the fact that he had to place his own kid in solitary confinement for God knows how long. 3. Jean Grey and Armageddon. Adding to the list of heroes with especially unusual kids is Armageddon, the child of Jean Grey and Apocalypse. Yeah. As a small mercy, the two didn't actually, get it on physically, but Apocalypse recombined his DNA with Jean's in a lab to create Armageddon. Hopefully poor old Armageddon doesn't know how dear old dad got that genetic material though, because that's a line of thought that does not bear going down. As all this happened in an alternate universe, we'll likely only get minimal looks into Armageddon's life, but what we have seen is undeniably fascinating. 2. Dracula and Deadpool. One of the weirder familial ties is that of step-husband, who is basically the husband of someone you were once married to. It's a weird term, and it gets all the more weird when you apply it to the relationship between Deadpool and Dracula. Yes, that's Dracula. The Prince of the Night was enamored with Shiklah, another member of supernatural royalty, and sent the Merc with a Mouth to bring him to her so the pair could marry. Only Shiklah fell in love with said loudmouth mercenary and his love of merciless killing. The two actually had a surprisingly stable relationship by comic book standards, at least until she tries to murder everyone and everything Deadpool loves. Eventually, Shiklah divorces Deadpool and marries Dracula, and while Deadpool is understandably devastated, he does now get to say that he's technically related to Nosferatu, which is, probably worth a failed marriage, probably. 1. Tony Stark and Arno Stark. When it turned out that Tony Stark was a hyper-intelligent chosen one picked out by a mystical entity from the stars, well, nobody was surprised. It seemed like yet another story showing just how special Iron Man indeed was, as though being a billionaire philanthropist playboy simply wasn't enough. But then the narrative totally changed, as we found out that said chosen one wasn't Tony, but rather his brother, Arno. Arno was actually the baby that was tampered with by the alien 451, presumably because he felt a connection with the baby because of their equally weird names. 451 technically saved Arno's life by fixing his genetic code in the womb, but Arno's father realized that the baby had a kill switch implanted in him by 451 that would kill Arno when he reached adulthood. In trying to remove this unfortunate feature, Howard would accidentally sabotage the first set of changes made by 451, making it so his son would be unable to breathe without the assistance of medical apparatus. Look, I know this sounds complicated and that's because it kind of is, but basically, it turned out that Tony was adopted initially merely as a decoy to hide the fact that the pair had tampered with Arno, so 451 would never find out that they went behind his back. Eventually the two met and put their differences aside, and Arno would eventually go on to take up the mantle of Iron Man 2020. And there you have it folks, 10 comic characters you didn't know were related. Feel free to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, and drop me a follow on Twitter at uslydowgu. You can also swing on by whatculture.com for daily news, lists, quizzes, articles, and all that other funky internet stuff. I'm Will for What Culture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.